Welcome back to Great Quarter, guys. This is episode 53. I haven't done a numerical episode in a long time, so this one is to Keith Bullock, my favorite Titan of all time, number 53. We've got a fun show. We're going to talk about the news that prompted Seth to sell his Tesla shares just recently. That is, of course, Apple entering the car market, expected to be 2024 when they bring their first consumer car. So we're going to talk about that, what its impact to the market is. Can they really be a competitor to Tesla? But before we do that, we're going to have a couple you care or nas. We're going to talk about XL Fleet, which is another EV SPAC. Again, just a whole pipeline of them. This one's actually pretty interesting. They're in a niche commercial fleet market. Then we'll talk about BarkBox. If there's anything that culminates 2020 better than a subscription service for your dog that's now valued at $2 billion and going public through a SPAC, it's BarkBox. So we're going to talk about those two as well. I wanted to give a shout out before we do that to Gene Soroka and the Port of LA longshoremen. They seemingly have saved Christmas. There's been news reports that Gene Soroka and those Port of LA longshoremen have gone out and have been plucking containers full of toys after the toy makers had come to them and said that the toys weren't going to be delivered by Christmas. So they've been filling Santa's sleigh with a bunch of containers at the Port of LA that had been stacked in the massive piles of cargo there. So shout out to you guys. All right, let's do it. You care or not, Seth, about XL Fleet. So this is the completion of another EV SPAC this week. This one, of course, XL Fleet. It finalized its merger with Pivotal Investing Corp. number 2 on Monday. XL Fleet is attacking the very large niche of commercial vehicles. Essentially, XL Fleet can turn all sorts of different commercial vehicles from F-150s to heavy-duty fire trucks and ambulance into hybrid or plug-in hybrid vehicles. Seth, you care or not about XL Fleet?
I do care about this one, and you know, it's also really a play on Class 8 vehicles too. So I don't know if you want to get into discussion about the business model here and maybe what they do, but basically XL Fleet is a company. They have electric powertrains that convert a gasoline or diesel-powered internal combustion engine to a hybrid, and that can be done on anything from an F-150 to an ambulance to a Class 8 truck. And so why it matters from our transportation angle, Jim Cramer did a big segment on this on Friday that you and I both watched. It was very good. I would recommend if you want to do more research and learn about the company. But so Class 8 trucks are only 2% of the, the U.S. commercial and retail
Total vehicles,
fleet.
yep.
But they consume, obviously, 20% of the fuel. So the question is, if you can do this at a decent cost, you can potentially, save the environment and save a lot of money on fuel. Now the question is, can you do that? And they already have a big customer list, including FedEx, and I'm looking here, Pepsi, Seattle Fire Department, GM, Ford. The list goes on. So it's a real company. It's growing, and I think there are a lot of questions that we can get into in terms of the long-term viability. But I think the overall thing about this company that I like is it's a transitional solution to that EV future. So one of the problems with Nikola or Tesla, the Tesla Semi, not only are commercial fleets, it has to be 99.9% reliable. Yep. You can't have downtime because you're missing out on revenue, and they want to wade into it, and then you can't get these production lines going. This is sort of a good solution to get you halfway there.
Yeah, agreed. It's a gradual solution that can help these companies try to test out some of the technology. That's a big thing. We've seen, whether it's Walmart or any of these big Anheuser-Busch, they've made big orders for Tesla semis, but they've only been like 100 semis. This is something that they can have to test and make sure that it works for their solution, and then, go in bigger then. So this is a good solution to help people kind of test the waters. I'll go ahead and explain a little bit, because I learned this during Cramer's little segment, that commercial vehicles are produced in 2 stages. They have the OEMs will, basically produce 90% of the vehicle, an almost finished product, and then they'll send it up to an upfitter who will outfit it with all the specialized equipment that it needs, the lights, the sensors, anything else that would be needed on a fire truck or something like that. And in that second stage is when this powertrain is added and can make a fossil fuel car a hybrid or a plug-in hybrid. So it's a really interesting model. It's a huge market. Cramer said that we spend $1 trillion on commercial vehicles every year. That includes everything from vehicle procurement. It includes fuel as well. Again, 20% of all fuel comes from these Class 8 trucks. So the market's huge. They've already installed it in 3,200 systems. Plan to have another 10,000 on the road by the end of 2021. So unlike a lot of these other EVs that we've seen, this is something we were just talking about off air. these SPACs and these SPAC EVs, they're able to put out these forward projections in their S1, and they're just outrageous. Most of them are, we have no revenue this year. We're going to have $500 million in next year and $2 billion in 4 years. This one actually seems to be a reasonable company that's already got a product on the market, and their projections are not outrageous.
Yeah, I agree. And that is one thing that has been interesting. I've been doing passport research. We wrote a paper last Friday on the electric vehicle market. It's just taken the capital markets by storm. I think just last Friday there were 5 SPACs in one day, and so this is a real one. It's got revenue. I think the CEO, I watched an interview of the CEO. They've already got like 15 million in revenue or something, and he projects it to triple this year. So I think some big questions here. I think it's worthy of more research, and maybe we can have somebody from the company on one day and we can talk more about it. But the big questions in my mind are, okay, in particular let's take an 18-wheeler or a Class 8 truck. We know from our sonar data that those get, only 6 or 7 miles to the gallon by diesel. So the question is, what is the cost of this electric powertrain, a hybrid powertrain that they offer? What's the return on investment? What's your new mileage? And what's your new fuel savings? But it seems pretty compelling to me, because if you think about the cost of running a trucking operation as a carrier, if you're a larger fleet, you do have a fuel surcharge, but a lot of those owner ops and some of the smaller fleets, they can't pass that through. But in any event, as a percentage of revenue, you basically have the driver and you have the fuel.
Yep.
And that's 70% of your operating costs. So I do think it's an enormous market, and I think they're tackling it with an interesting product that's definitely worthy of more research. And one sort of existential question. The other thing, they have their owner, or their chairman, is the owner of the New York Islanders, and is a well-known, respected businessman. So they definitely have that management angle as well. I think one of the questions is, in terms of these powertrains, so all the OEMs including Tesla, are looking to make their own. So the question is, once we go to that all-electric world, and whether that's 5, 10, 15 years down the road, what is this company's role in that world? Whether it, and most likely it's probably licensing out their technology to the OEMs, but I think that's sort of one of the main long-term questions.
Yeah, I think that could be a good case for them to eventually get to a point where they're just licensing the tech. But yeah, it's definitely, it's a big issue once they go into in-house sourcing all of this, the powertrain, and vertical integration is something we're going to talk about with Apple and their car production, but it's something that Tesla's definitely is very important to Tesla's success, and I think other car manufacturers are going to follow that suit and bring a lot of things in-house as well. So they may not have as big of an opportunity if that happens, but the licensing there is certainly a way that they could go. Let's shift over to BarkBox, because this is just, it's just funny, really. This is one I'm going to go ahead and tell you I don't care about this one, but we'll talk about what is happening. So BarkBox is a company that offers monthly subscription boxes for dog toys, treats, and other goodies for our 4-legged companions. They now have over 1 million subs. They've grown 58% this year. They now cracked 1 million subs in the US, and they've decided to go ahead and jump on this frothy market and go public. So I don't care about this one, but Seth, we'll get into some of the details of the company after you tell me whether you care or not about BarkBox.
Yeah, no, I don't care about this one. Although I agree with you. I'm not going to laugh at it and dismiss it, because these pet companies, it's a huge market, and it's a growing market, and it is a market that I learned long ago. It is something, the very last things that people will cut is their cable bill, their cigarettes, and their
dog toys.
And their dog toy.
Yeah,
and
that's
spending
true.
on their animals.
That's true.
So I do think it's a little bit funny, and it kind of seems the business model seems a little silly to me. It's you pay the basic subscription is you pay $25 a month, and you receive a box full of dog treats, toys, and a chew toy, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's it. And you get $25. I don't know what their margins on. I haven't read through their S1 yet. I probably should have done that before this, but I just don't know how. I think there are plans for expansion. They could get into dog food and dog medicines, but as we spoke about right before we came on, to do that you got to get a veterinary license in all 50 states, which is not easy. It took Chewy a long time to get that, didn't it?
Well, so I mean, there's the over-the-counter market, and then there's the prescription market. So a lot of the business done in animal health is stuff like flea and tick, which a lot of that stuff is over the counter, and so that's easy. You can sell it. But there's also, that's a competitive market. There's not a lot of barriers to entry. And I know me, I wanted to sign up for Chewy, but then I just signed up through Amazon to get my dog food once every 6 months on auto subscription. I'm like, really, what is the reason that I need to sign up with BarkBox or Chewy or whoever it is? Why do I need a dedicated dog food subscription? I mean, that is a question I would put to the management of this company.
Right. And I guess, they come back with some sort of customer experience and that we provide a service that you can't, and I guess I do get the point of these boxes. I don't know exactly how BarkBox does it, but I know my girlfriend gets a couple different like makeup boxes, and they just get samples or they get really cheap stuff that's almost donated to them, and that's how they sell the boxes at $20 and make a decent margin on them. So I don't know. I assume BarkBox is doing something similar like that. You get some sort of samples that they have very little cost in, and that's where they get their margin on the boxes. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a statement on a much larger trend, which is, everything is moving towards subscriptions and direct to consumer. So, I was thinking the other day about this company, Quip. They make the toothbrushes that they send to you. So you just see more and more of these, and 90% of this company, their revenue comes from subscriptions. So as long as they have low churn, it is going to get valued at a high multiple. And I think they probably have figured it out. I'm guessing they have loyal customers. I don't know how many more millions there are. It would seem like you probably penetrate the low-hanging fruit in terms of the super dog fans that are really willing to spend. I mean, because it's not that cheap. It's like $400 a year for dog toys. So with me, with my golden retriever, just give him
all he needs is a tennis ball.
balls,
and he's a happy boy.
Yeah.
But yeah, one thing I wanted to note is that PetSmart is going to come public through. They're actually going to IPO, guys. They're going to IPO here in the next couple months. So we're going to have Woof and Bark as tickers. I love a pronounceable ticker. So we're going to have both of those coming to the market here in the next few weeks. All right, let's shift gears to Apple cars. It's our main conversation of the day. I'm going to break it down as the story, then I'm going to give you some of the facts, and then Seth and I will jump into our analysis of what we think about the move. So Apple is apparently resurrecting plans to make a car. The tech behemoth is moving forward with a self-driving car technology and is targeting 2024 to produce passenger vehicles that could include its own breakthrough battery technology. There have been rumors of Apple developing a car going back all the way to 2015, but there's been a lot of murky waters since then. In 2016, the project was scaled down significantly. They scrapped the development of a full car, and they refocused the team to provide software that would be licensed to car manufacturers. And then 200 people were laid off just last year in Apple's car team, which is titled Project Titan. Now it seems that Apple has a renewed focus on building an actual vehicle, though there's a lot of uncertainty of when and even if that would happen. Reuters came out. They were the ones that broke this story, I think just yesterday, and they said they're aiming for 2024 as a production goal, but that could be pushed back into 2025 or beyond because of pandemic-related delays. There's also still a chance that Apple could scale its efforts back and just do autonomous driving tech or some other type of EV method. So here's some of the facts. Doug Field, he's got quite a resume. He used to be the CTO of Segway. He was formerly of Apple. He was at Apple a few years back. He headed some hardware design. Then he went to Tesla, was a VP of manufacturing there, and now he's back to run the car development side of things. They've also shifted gears on the software side. They've gone away from a hardware guy to their artificial intelligence chief, John Giandera. He's going to take over the self-driving unit. And here's some of the crazy things. So this was reported out of Taipei-based Economic Daily News. They reported that automotive suppliers, including Taiwan's Hota Industrial Manufacturing Company, have been told by Apple to ramp up production for parts as early as the end of next year, by September. So that would be 2021 as, some sort of putting things together for Apple. And the big fact here is that the timing is quite peculiar. Foxconn Technology Group, which is its biggest supplier, they're the ones that make all the iPhones, that Apple wouldn't be able to survive without them, and Foxconn wouldn't be able to survive without Apple. Apple, they're also getting into cars. They released just this past week that they're going to release an open vehicle platform in October. The company says that it will start shipping a first EV development kit. So you basically get a chassis and an electrical system for developers to then build a car on top of. They're going to be doing that. So after years of hearing very little out of Cupertino and out of Apple on this, we have them shifting their plans away from a hardware chief to an AI leader. They have the primary manufacturing partner unveiling its own modular product. And then you also have all these other news of different companies getting into the EV market. But the truth is, Apple has a lot of cash. They've got $200 billion in cash. And so if they're going to go after a big market, that was one of my questions. Is this the best use of Apple's cash? That's what we'll get into. But they've got a lot of it on hand, and they need to do something big with it.
Yeah, so my take here is a couple things. This has been a long time coming. I think Apple is back, and Apple is coming right at Tesla. And one thing I'd say about just sort of at a high level is on the competitive front for Tesla, their main challengers have been traditional OEMs, which for a lot of reasons, legacies, existing infrastructure, they haven't been able to dive headfirst into electric vehicles, and Tesla's gotten a big lead on them. And so I think just as a stock, Tesla has thrived as an open-ended growth story. And so for me, you referenced the fact that Tesla was already on a short lease for me. So full disclosure, I was ready to sell that stock. I do think that, just this whole electric vehicle rally has gotten insane personally. But I do think that this is the real first formidable competition that Tesla may face. And yes, it's 3 or 4 years down the road. But I think for Tesla investors, this is going to be a multi-year overhang that it's a cloud that may hang over this stock and have people worried about it. And it may sort of limit that TAM argument, the total addressable market, because this isn't a cheap Chinese knockoff. This is Apple. And Apple it's one of the few companies in the world that I think you could logically argue has as powerful of a brand as Tesla does. And not only is it powerful, but it's a premium brand that conveys that sense of of luxury, class and luxury and everything. And so I think and not only that, it's a technology company, right? And so I think Apple has $200 billion in cash, I think you said. That's more than the market caps of 99% of the rest of the world. They've got the engineers, they've got the brand, they've got the vertical integration with the hardware and the software. The only question is, Apple's coming from a place of a business with incredible economics. Now, and the car business, as it exists today, does not have good economics. It's capital intensive, it's low margin. Now, the question that I know you want to talk about, and I know I want to talk about, is in an autonomous world, in a Internet of Cars, IOC world, are there whole new revenue streams out there, whether it's full self-driving packages, whether it's entertainment, whether it's music, whatever it may be? Is this their whole other trillions of dollars in revenue streams out there that maybe Apple is thinking bigger than just being a car OEM hardware manufacturer?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I want to say when you talk about profit margins, there's an article from Business Insider that compares that talks about the idea for Apple, and they just compared them to Volkswagen, who's the biggest car producer in the world. They produced 11 million cars last year. Over the last 10 years, they have operated with an average profit margin of 7%. Apple, on the other hand, is operated with a 28% profit margin. So just to get an idea of the market that they would be going into, the market they would go into today is a lot different from the market that they're going to be trying to create, as you said, in this Internet of Cars, and the same thing that Tesla is in as well. But let's talk about Apple's advantages, because you touched on them there, but there's 5 big ones, and you said each of them. One of them is they have that critical talent pipeline. That's been something that was difficult for Tesla to build up, and they have a lot of churn at Tesla. It's a very demanding work environment and work culture. We haven't heard that so much out of Apple since Tim Cook has taken over. It seems to be a more people's person than previous management. They have massive cash reserves. So to put this in context, they have $200 billion in cash. Amazon, backed Rivian, has raised $6 billion over the last 6 or 7 years, and that's a lot of money. I mean, that's a very highly backed startup it's got cars on the road. They've just rolled out their first vehicles with Amazon, but just to put in perspective how much cash Apple has, they've got plenty to go after this. They've got a history of disruptive hardware from the iPhone to all the way back to the Macs and the PCs, but through even today with everything that they create. The brand recognition, that's something that this world-class brand is not something that Rivian and Fisker and Lucid and some of their other competition can fall back on. And then they have that rich ecosystem that they can leverage recurring subscription service revenue. And let's talk about this for a minute, because you made a funny point that I hadn't thought about. There's a lot of spin-off markets of this. You said you think the value of billboards are going to go up a lot when autonomous vehicles become a thing, because we will no longer have our eyes on the road. We'll have our eyes elsewhere. It's the same idea with this recurring subscription. There's thoughts that Tesla's going to add more screens, and they're redoing the Model S and Model X right now, and they're thinking that they're going to add a lot more screens because they're going to eventually be selling or licensing content on those screens while people are riding in this autonomous Tesla. So that Internet of Cars, that subscription, that I think Apple is thinking ahead and thinking that is where the real money is that this is a low margin business, but they can have this high margin recurring revenue in an autonomous system where people will just be consuming content while they're riding.
Right, and I think was it the Reuters or the Barron's article that we read in the script? But I mean, I think if you think really high level, what are Tim Cook and the rest of the Apple executives thinking strategically here? Not only do you have these potential new revenue streams, but there's over 1 billion people in terms of the existing retail auto fleet in the world. You got like 1.5 billion cars, and people driving 20,000 miles a year. It's literally the math breaks your calculator, and so there may be some other objective, even if it's a loss leader or it is not as profitable as their base and legacy core business. There may be other reasons that they want to get into that car, especially one could argue as it goes autonomous. People may just be staring at their screens all the time. They may be on the internet, so that my billboard thesis might prove false because they might be looking at their phones the whole time.
Right,
but
the idea is
it will open up all sorts of new revenue streams and products and everything else.
So let's talk about the product for a moment. Like we don't know what Apple's going to do. They are historically very tight-lipped for good reason. They don't release any information about their upcoming products. So we don't know what they're going to do. We don't know whether they're going to go after a $25,000 market or a $100,000 car market. But you have to think that Apple wouldn't release a product that they don't think is going to exceed customer expectations or consumer expectations. That's kind of been their thing. They produce really good products, always deliver on time, and they're always very reliable. And so they must feel that they've got a better plan or a better product than Tesla. And like the thing that these two Apple spokespersons that kind of leaked the information to Reuters, they wanted to stay anonymous, of course, because this is not public information yet. But they said that the company is going to come with game-changing battery technology, and it's going to be a bigger monocell design. So basically, you reduce the number of batteries in the pack so that you can increase energy density. That has its cons as well with charging speed and heat. Those are the two main cons that come with making bigger batteries. Tesla's already doing that. They've already moving to a larger cell. They're moving to the 4680 cell that they announced on Battery Day. They're already producing cars in China and California with the 4680 cell. And then the next kind of game-changing technology that they said was, Apple is examining a lithium iron phosphate battery, which again, another thing Tesla has already seen and is already producing cars in China with LFP batteries. So I wonder, these two things that were supposed to be game-changing, Tesla's already ahead of. They're already working on these things, and you're chasing a moving target with Tesla. You don't know what they're going to be producing in 2025. So do you think? I don't know. Do you think they've produced? You think that they're going to have an obvious real competitor here? That's why you sold your shares and are skeptical of it.
Well, and I mean, a lot of that just has to do with dynamics, where I think Tesla is priced for perfection. Where any sort of, when a stock goes up 15 times in 18 months, any sort of negative news, and I think we can get into that, but to your point though, we don't know what Apple has. It sounds like they've been working behind the scenes on this for at least 5 or 6 years. So if they do have game-changing battery technology, as the article asserts, then maybe they're not as far behind as one would believe. And the other point I would make on that is that Apple, prior to today, in the last 24 hours, was a $2 trillion company. And the only news that has come out, and it's on a down day for the market, Apple's up 4 or 5% in the last 24 hours. So, you and I talked about it. Basically, the market has assessed this as a $100 billion addition to their market capitalization in 24 hours. So somebody out there thinks that they have something and that maybe that there's some good things to come from Apple. And I've been following this story just from an investment and research perspective. It's been long talked about for 5 or 6 years. A lot of it's been off and on. A lot of people thought it was dead, but if Apple really does have something, I guess I would characterize it as this: as either a Tesla shareholder or a Tesla employee, Ford or GM is not keeping me up at night. Apple might.
Yeah, that's the conversation I wanted to get into, because it's the same thing that I've been saying for a long time about autonomous vehicles, autonomous trucks rather. It's the ones that win the best plan, the best method to get to market, I think, is a startup to develop the technology and the software to then pair with an OEM to put it in the cars. Because doing both, for the big guys, the software is not their game, and for the small guys, the manufacturing is not their game. So the method that Apple's going to have here, they're not going to be producing the cars, manufacturing the cars like Tesla does, but their partners are going to be very important in who they choose to end up building this. But they've taken a lot, at the same time, they've taken a lot of their portions of this back in-house, their sensors, their LiDAR, all of these different, there's 5 different systems that will be in these cars that they've taken back in-house in the last 2 years. So there's just a lot going on. And
that being said, Apple is maniacal about their product design. Anyone if you've read the Steve Jobs, Walter Isaacson biography, everything down to the last line and the way it looks, the screen, everything. They think long and hard about those things. So even if they outsource the manufacturing, Apple will they will be essentially like an architect. They don't build the building, but everything about that car is going to be controlled by Apple, in my opinion.
Yes, I agree with that. And what's my last point? I think let's talk about scale here for a minute, because I think that's an important point that we haven't brought up yet, and that is that, like I said, you're chasing a moving target with Tesla. This year, they're going to produce 500,000 cars or so, deliver 500,000 cars or so. Next year, they're planning to do about 1 million, and then another 1 million by 2024, 2025. So by the time that Apple rolls out its first car, which we don't know what kind of scale they're going to be at, whether they're going to be, it took Tesla 5 or 6 years to get to the point to be able to produce 100,000 cars. Again, they're going to be outsourcing a lot of this manufacturing, so they're not going to be building these factories from scratch to do it. But by the time that Apple is producing even 100,000 cars, Tesla will be making 3, 4, 5 million. So, what is the market if you're Apple and if you're not going to have that big of a piece of the market in 2025? What kind of car do you produce? Is it really a $30,000 car?
Yeah, I think we could talk for this about a half an hour, and we got 2 minutes. So I'm going to try to think real quick. And so Apple has traditionally had premium products, right? And Tesla has premium products, but they've been going down market into the Model 3s and the Model Ys from the S's and the Roadsters.
Yep.
So going down from 100,000, and that's been. So the question is, though, Apple does have that $200 billion in cash. They cash flow $100 billion a year in cash flow. So it's not going to be a question of money, right? And if they have a partner, it depends on who. I don't know anything about automotive production, so I'm just kind of riffing here. But it seems like if anyone could get it done, they could. They have the cash. They have it. We've already discussed everything else. Why would you not want to work with Apple? Now, I think the Reuters article discussed Magna International, who is a big auto supplier and manufacturer. They needed a minimum volume commitment of 100,000 to do business with Apple. So just to put that in context, there's 100 million cars. There's 100 million cars sold. So, but I think regardless of whether it's a $30,000 car or a $60,000 car, there is that contingent, that legion of millions and hundreds of millions of Apple fans all over the globe that would buy this thing.
I agree. The only thing that scares me as a Tesla fan and a Tesla stock owner is that brand. That's it. Nothing else scares me, because I know how difficult it's been for Tesla to build the manufacturing, get the batteries, get all the technology right. I've seen how difficult that is. But building the brand was quite easy for them. They're going to have this really difficult brand to go up against. I don't know if it's the best, I think my whole takeaway from here is that I don't know if this is the best thing for Apple to do, but if they're going to go after a big market, this is a big one that's growing. Autonomous vehicles and electric vehicles are going to be here. They have the brand name, the cash, and the power to do it, so why not do it? That's kind of the question.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we're going to end it here, but I do think this is sort of a watershed moment for the electric vehicle industry, so it'll be interesting to watch.
So we're going to be covering more of this in the new year. We're back next Tuesday for our last show of the year. See you then.